All right, folks, we're doing this again. Like I said, 365 days. We're going to get them all done. This week, I'm going to talk about 5 topics that you're probably already ready to talk about. Now, a lot of times when I talk to people about starting a podcast, a lot of folks say, well, I can't think of anything that I want to talk about, right? So they're like, well, I really love baking. And when I'm getting ready to start a podcast, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. And I had kind of the same problem when I started podcasting. So my first podcast was called Rails Coach, and it was about Ruby on Rails programming. And I didn't feel like an expert. I felt like I was a total noob. And furthermore, I didn't really know what to talk about. I didn't know what topics to cover. Part of it was just a little bit of feeling like I wasn't an expert. And so I can only talk about noob topics or topics that newer people probably already knew, just like me. And some of it was, well, I can talk about, 4 or 5, maybe 10 ideas about how Rails works, and then I'm out of ideas, right? And it turned out that there were plenty of other things that helped me figure out what I wanted to do. So I'm going to throw out a couple of ideas on how you can come up with topics for your podcast and help you understand where you're going to wind up with a lot of that stuff. So the first thing that I'm going to throw at you is what are you working on right now, right? What are you actually doing right now in your life, in your job, in your hobby, in whatever you're going to talk about that you're learning, right? And then just talk about that and just tell people about your experience. I was working on blah blah blah. So for me, it would have been I've been building this app on the side, and I tried out this library. In Ruby they call them gems, but Ruby gem. I was trying out this gem, and it worked out really nicely to allow me to do this thing. And so I'm just going to talk about how I used it and how it came together, right? Or I can talk about I, reworked some of the code and I moved some of it from here to here, and it was much nicer. So here's an idea about how you can, what we call refactor the code. In other words, how you can move stuff around or recode it basically in a different way, but still have it work and make it better. Right. Or I was testing my code yesterday and I found a new technique for that. Or even some of the other stuff that's not necessarily technical, right? So it's, well, I've been having this issue with one of my coworkers lately, and I just wanted to talk briefly about it. You may have to be a little bit careful about that, but things like that. Or my development team tried a new technique for identifying issues that we're trying to solve, and so we did this and it turned out it worked. Or we're adopting a new method for this. And, anyway, so you can talk about some of the personal stuff, interpersonal stuff at work, again, with a little bit of common sense. But anyway, there are a lot of topics that you can just come up with there. One other one that I'm going to throw out there. So I've been doing this challenge called One Funnel Away, and I'll put a link to it in the notes on this video. But one thing that they did is they had us come up with our origin story, right? And so I put down my origin story, and then they've been teaching us about hooks, which are essentially things that you can expand deeper on, in this case, out of my origin story. And this was one of them, right? Where I was trying to get the podcast started, and some of the episodes I had guests, but the other ones were not interviews. And so what did I do, right? And so that was something that came out of it. Okay, I'm not an expert. I don't have a bazillion things to talk about. I haven't written a book on this, right? So I don't have things that I can pick out. So where do I get it from? And I just wanted to talk through that, because at the end of the day, what I wound up doing on weeks that I didn't have a guest, somebody to actually interview, what I wound up doing was actually sitting down with people, or sitting down with myself and saying, okay, what am I working on? And then I would just talk through it. And so sometimes it was, here are the basics on this thing, right? Because it was a topic that I understood. And sometimes it was, I was working with this thing and this is how I got it to work. Or this is something that I learned at work. Or, this is something that I thought about as far as how teams can work better. Or I'm a team lead at work now, and so this is something that I'm running into. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas on what you can work on. But the other thing is go tell a story, right? Go tell how you overcame some problem, and then go back through and say, okay, what can I go deeper on here? And and you'll get some ideas there. So I know this one was quick, but hopefully it gives you a few ideas on how you can get started with your podcast. What I would actually do is go write them down, and then from there, you can actually then create the episodes for those topics. So anyway, that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to put in here. So there you go.